Adam, let's start right there. Ohio State going with Julian Sayin as a team starting quarterback, and I think that was expected. But because it took so long for Ryan Day to name a QB, is that a concern for Ohio State, or was this just sort of keeping in with the competitive spirit of making sure everyone competes for the starting job?
Yeah, good to be with you guys. I think that, Sayin was certainly the favorite. I think you could probably be a bit concerned that this wasn't named after the spring, but he's a young quarterback who hasn't played a lot. I mean, 5 of 12 last year passing, just a handful of opportunities. Now he's competing against a guy in Lincoln Keenholz that I had heard really good things about all offseason. His athleticism, his mental approach, just the way he connected with the other players. So I think Keenholz really made this a competition. But I think until we see Sayin out there, this will be a really good defense right off the bat, but certainly a decent sample size of opponents. I think it's fair to have at least some level of concern. This is the least experienced quarterback group that Ryan Day has had as an assistant or as a head coach at Ohio State since he got there. So it's going to be a process with probably not a linear development. It's going to be a little up and down for Julian Sayin, but he's got all the ability. His release, his arm talent. I mean, there was a reason he was a 5-star recruit coming out of high school in California. So I think Ohio State fans, they aren't the most patient bunch, but they're going to have to be, I think, with this quarterback as he rounds into form.
Yeah, so what can we take away from watching the Ohio State and Texas game? It feels like a huge game. It feels like there's questions on both sides of the ball for both teams. Maybe not on the defensive side for Texas. Defense is pretty good. But Arch Manning, it feels like we've already given him the Heisman, even though he has a pretty limited sample size as well. Just how big is this first game of the season for Texas and Ohio State?
Well, it's really significant for Texas because, they lost to Ohio State last year in the semifinal. They have the more complete defense, as you mentioned. They have a quarterback in Arch Manning who's been in the program. This is his third year, even though he hasn't played a ton, and you mentioned the expectations. So, to me, it's a more significant game for Texas than Ohio State because of all the questions the Buckeyes have after losing 14 NFL draft picks and other players from that championship team. Because, again, I would caution anyone who loses this game from freaking out because it's a first game with a lot of new players on either side. But I would be a bit concerned on the Texas side if they don't go out and look like a team that can compete for the national championship, because that's absolutely what they should be this year, having reached the playoff each of the last 2 years, having a quarterback like Manning, having defensive players like Anthony Hill Jr. and Colin Simmons. That's really a loaded group. So, it's a little more important for Texas. But, again, I would just caution against super overreactions coming out of this game, because you're looking at two teams that supplied a large percentage of the players who were drafted in the NFL back in April.
We're talking with Adam Rittenberg. He is the senior college football writer for ESPN. So, Adam, I'm trying not to reveal my personal feelings here, but how many teams potentially are enough for the college football playoff?
I think it's fine at 12. The thing that's so amazing about this conversation, guys, is it's very hard historically for college sports to make any changes, to increase their playoff size, to decide on anything. And they go from 4 to, it's hard to get to 4, as you guys know, and then they go from 4 to 12, 3 times the amount. I'm not great at math, but I think it's 3 times the amount. And I think there were a lot of really good things about last year's playoff. They figured out the seeding, and that's going to be improved going forward. The idea that you go to 12 and you're already talking about 16, and then obviously there's some preliminary talks about 24, 28. It's so unlike college sports to be already in these discussions. We got to get bigger. We're not valued enough. 8-4 is a good record. I mean, this is just insane when you think about how difficult it's been for college football in particular to get to a playoff to begin with, and then to expand the playoff. I think 12 should be able to breathe for a little while, especially with the straight seeding. before we go bigger. But again, you guys know it. Every playoff system in this country and every sport gets bigger and bigger, and more than likely, college football's playoff will get bigger than 12. It's just a matter of how big.
Yeah, I wanted to ask you who your dark horse team is. Maybe a fringy team from a big conference that gets hot, that kind of has an easy schedule. I know some people like Oklahoma this year. Some people are sold on maybe like Nebraska having a good season this year. What's that team for you?
Yeah, I mean, listen, I've been as down on Nebraska as anyone since they joined the Big Ten, and rightfully so, but their schedule does set up pretty well for them to have a really nice record. Now, will that result in a playoff appearance? I'm still a little bit skeptical. You look at the SEC, and no one's really talking about Tennessee, a team that made the playoff last year. Obviously, with Nico Iamaleava leaving, there's questions about what they're going to be on the offensive side. Texas A&M is another one of those dangerous teams where they are often projected a lot higher than they end up finishing. But there's some things I really like about their team. Offensive line-wise, one of the better O-lines in the country. They have multiple options at running back. Talking with Mike Elko, their head coach, a couple of weeks ago, he's really bullish on Marcel Reed, their returning starter at quarterback. So, A&M is interesting to me. And then, in the Big Ten, there's a lot of justified hype around Illinois. Coming off of a 10-win season, beating South Carolina in a bowl game. They return a lot of those key players from that team, including quarterback Luke Altmaier, Gabe Jacobs, one of the best defensive players in the country. But Illinois has never had back-to-back 10-win seasons. So there's sort of a pro and a con for all of these, dark horse contenders. It's why I might look to another league like the ACC, perhaps the Big 12. I know the Big 12 really wants to have multiple playoff entrants this year, but, a lot of those teams look very similar talent-wise on paper entering the season.
Adam, I know you talked about Texas's game against Ohio State being huge for the Longhorns. I think that's absolutely right. But is there more pressure on anyone than James Franklin and Penn State? Because all we hear across the country is this is the year. This is finally the year for the Nittany Lions.
No doubt. And I think it's as simple as you can look at it from hey, they lost a lot of big games under James Franklin. It's not a new story. But then you look at last year, the semifinal group, and Texas loses a lot to the NFL. Ohio State loses 14 to the NFL, tying a record. Notre Dame loses their quarterback, Riley Leonard, and some really good defensive players. Penn State, they lost Abdul Carter, but they bring back most of the key guys from that team, which I thought was better than Notre Dame, and credit to Notre Dame for finding a way to win and go to the national championship. So it's all set up for Penn State. Very easy opening. They get Oregon at home at night. It's not a schedule that's loaded with difficult opponents. So if not now, when is it going to happen for them? With a senior quarterback and Drew Aller, excellent running back group, defensive stars that are still there, guys like Denai Dennis Sutton, who I'm really excited about, Zakee Wheatley in the back end, and then an offensive line that has steadily improved the last few years under James Franklin. So it really feels set up that anything less than a championship, whether it's Big Ten or national, there's going to be some level of disappointment, obviously barring injuries and such. But this is a huge, huge year for Penn State because it's all lined up for them to have that breakthrough next step.